Well, the arrest of Huawei, say that properly, CFO, has, reignited concerns about a trade war with China. But the president tweeted this morning. Here's what he tweeted. China talks are going very well.
Right. So after this executive was detained on the same day that President Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping met at the G20 summit in Argentina and agreed to a temporary truce, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov slammed Meng's detention today, calling it an example of arrogant U.S. policy abroad.
Okay, so for more on this, we want to bring in CBSN contributor Willis Sparks. He writes for Signal, a newsletter for G0 Media. Willis.
Good morning.
I'm glad you're here, because when I read about this story, and it was just this wee little thing, I thought this sounds like a big, big deal. How significant is this?
This is a huge story.
Yeah.
You've already covered a lot of important stories this morning. You're going to cover a lot more over the course of the day. There's a lot going on, but we need to take a moment and really look at this story. The chief financial officer of Huawei, which is not just a Chinese telecom giant, this is a global telecom giant, has been arrested in Canada, and there are in the works plans to extradite her to the United States. But this woman is not just the CFO of this hugely important company. She is the daughter of the man who founded the company. In Huawei terms, she's the Ivanka Trump of this company. And in China, that plays very big. The Chinese media is furious. The Chinese government is furious. In a lot of ways, it seems strange to talk about $250 billion in tariffs in this trade war as if it's a sideshow. But in a lot of ways, the trade issues that we're spending so much time on are a sideshow. And what's going on in technology development between the U.S. and China, that's the real show here. Right. There's so much at stake. The suggestion is, we don't know specifically what she has been or will be charged with. We don't know that. But the accusation against Huawei, which has been in the works for a long time, is that Huawei, unlike the independent companies that we're used to thinking of in the West, is directly connected to the Chinese government, the Chinese intelligence community, and the Chinese state. And again, they are one of the big telecom manufacturers on the planet.
When you say directly connected, the allegation is that they're essentially a front for Chinese espionage.
Well,
or is that too strong?
No, it's not too strong. There are a lot of people who believe that it is. That the founder of this company himself was a member of the People's Liberation Army and was involved in communications for the army. So that's an accusation. What we can say is that under Chinese law, if the Chinese state wants data that you're holding, you have to give it to them. This is not a situation where we can have a battle in the courts over whether, an American telecom company has to hand over some information to the U.S. government. In China, it's a much more direct question. So let me explain what the stakes here are. There's the security element of this. There are governments, not just the U.S. government, by the way. There are other governments that are looking at this saying that Huawei may be a kind of stalking horse that allows for espionage on a massive scale of governments and companies around the world. That's the security aspect of this. There's also the commercial aspect of it, because Huawei is a world leader in developing technologies that are going to define everything from driverless cars to smart cities in the future. Artificial intelligence is the economic playing field that's going to determine the balance of power in the 21st century. Huawei is a major player. And if the U.S. then takes the next step and says, we're not going to share technology with Huawei, we're going to make it illegal for American companies to supply Huawei, then this is an escalation that goes way beyond any question of soybeans and other products that may be captured in this $250 billion in tariffs.
What about this business of Iranian sanctions that was floated too, and then it seemed to sort of disappear? Is that connected?
Well, part of at least the surface accusations is that Huawei is guilty of taking American technology and selling it in Iran in violation of Iran sanctions. I have no idea, how much evidence there is to suggest that. But ostensibly, the question is Huawei sharing proprietary technology with Iran and North Korea and Sudan and a lot of other governments around the world that the U.S. government, of course, considers bad actors? That's part of the security dimension. But this is commercial and security together. And I think that in terms of U.S.-China rivalry going forward in this century, this is a much bigger deal than trade tariffs on individual products, no matter how many hundreds of billions of dollars we're talking about.
So let's play a soundbite from Senator Marco Rubio, Florida.
Well, they're an instrument and an arm of the government. Their companies are not like ours. I mean, we can't, Apple won't even give the FBI a way to crack a phone if we're in the middle of a terrorist investigation. These Chinese companies are state-supported and state-controlled. They may have on paper independence, but if the Chinese government asks them to do something, they have to do it by law. And they're an instrument that they use to spy and to steal intellectual property and to try to dominate the 5G marketplace.
The fact that we do not know exactly why she's been arrested, Senator Rubio can say that all day long in front of the cameras. He needs to provide proof to the American people that this is why she's been arrested. Also, doesn't this set a dangerous precedent? I mean, if you're an American CEO and you're building and you have sweatshops in countries, in poor countries, and you happen to travel there and you're arrested because that government's leader says you're exploiting our children. I feel like because we don't know why she's been arrested, and we've got a lot of politicians sort of pontificating in front of the cameras, it does seem a little murky. It just seems strange.
It is murky, but I think the fact that this pontification is going on and the fact that they did arrest this person is a sign that the gloves really are off. Because you're right, it is a dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
And what U.S. authorities are saying is, we know it's a dangerous precedent, but the stakes in this particular case are so high, we're going to do it anyway. And I want to emphasize again, in defense of what Senator Rubio is saying, it's not just the United States that has this concern. Australia and New Zealand last week said, our governments are not going to buy Huawei products anymore because we don't trust them. There's pressure in Japan right now on that same front. Japanese government not going to buy these products. They don't trust the product. We're seeing in Britain, in Canada, and elsewhere, a lot of people looking at Huawei. These accusations have been out there for years. But to me, what's really interesting about this, the willingness to accept that dangerous precedent that you're pointing to, is it goes back to the question, if the U.S. and China are going to negotiate over 100 different things, is it important to say, look, we can't point guns at each other while we do this? Or, on the other hand, is the U.S. saying, you have to point guns while you're negotiating this because you're not going to get a real deal unless you do? And we're going to find out, I think, over the course of the next few months and years who's right about that.
Yeah, but Willis, you know culture in Asia as well. I mean, this is a huge loss of face for the Chinese.
No question.
They do not have to worry about elections. Their leaders there do not have to worry about public opinion or polls or anything. And the idea, in my mind, that they would look at this and that would bring them somehow to the negotiating table without allowing them to save face, is going to be very tricky for this country to manage.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And it's at a time when supposedly what President Trump and President Xi just agreed is 90 days we're going to negotiate. We're going to freeze all of the escalation of the tariffs for 90 days. So we're going to see. But you're absolutely right. This is very high profile. This is happening in front of everyone. And that's why, by the way, why I make the analogy with Ivanka Trump. Obviously, this is not, the daughter of the president of the country. But this is the daughter of the president of the founder of Huawei. She's very well known throughout this country. This is big news there in a way that we don't really appreciate in this country.
And there are Americans that are there. Who knows how the Chinese will retaliate? American businessmen that are in China right now that they may just decide for whatever reason, and they can do it. And I think that's why, it just seems strange that we don't know exactly the reasons why.
And if they look at this and say the U.S. have grabbed a bargaining chip that they're going to hold over our heads, well, then why don't they have the incentive to grab a couple of bargaining chips of their own?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, it's very, very interesting. Of course, you can check out all these stories. There's also hard numbers that we normally do all the time. We're running out of time today. Check it all out by subscribing to the Signal newsletter. Sign up for it at g0media.com. Thank you.